As I've reflected over the last few months, where we here in Australia had a referendum around including an Indigenous voice to Parliament, one of the things that really stood out for me was the idea of privilege. Privilege that the majority of Australians had and which was firmly on display. When we hear the word privilege or think of the word privilege, we often tack the word white on the front so that people with a skin colour like mine, we have certain privileges. We have white privilege that is given to us purely because of the colour of our skin. I want to unpack this idea of privilege because, yes, white people do have privileges, and it was really clear in the referendum, the privileges that we had. But privilege also extends to other people as well. To think of privilege, think of students sitting in a stepped auditorium at a university. The lecturer is down the front. You've got the people in the first row, second row, third row, all the way back up to, say, the 10th or the 12th row. The lecturer sets them all the same task: to wad up a piece of paper from their notebook and lob it into the waste paper basket that is sitting on the floor in front of the lecturer. Same task. Everybody in the same room. Of course, the people in the front row had an easier task actually to complete because they were closer to the basket, and over 90% of the people in that row got their piece of wadded up paper into the basket. People in the second row, they weren't quite as accurate. They weren't quite as able to get the paper into the basket, so say maybe 80%. By the time you got to the people who are in the 10th or 12th row, the possibilities of them being able to actually get their piece of paper even to the floor had significantly decreased. And very, very few of people in those rows did. Same task, same objective, but those who were in the front rows were privileged by their position to be able to complete the task. Now, this is what I saw during the referendum, that there was a certain privilege around ignorance. We all heard that if you don't know, vote no. However, what this does is it fed into a privilege that many of us have. Well, if it doesn't concern me, then I'm not going to get involved. This doesn't directly affect me, therefore I don't need to give it any time or thought. My ignorance is sufficient. Now, I'm not going to be passing any judgments on where my thoughts were around the referendum or the results. I just want to highlight what I observed about privilege. And the first thing I observed was this sense of privilege around ignorance. If it doesn't impact me, well, then I don't really need to learn about it. And these things not only impact us at times when, as a nation, we have to make a decision, but also in the workplace. Well, I'm not part of that team. I don't need to worry about what they're doing. I don't need to worry about their capacity or whether I can help them in any way. That's not my job. You do that. Don't come to me for help. It's this sense of the privilege of ignorance. I don't have to be involved. I don't need to know. I don't need to care. However, we know in the workplace, and we saw in the referendum, that sense of the privilege of ignorance actually had a huge impact on the outcome of the referendum. And so it does in the workplace, that there is a sense of disconnection between people, a sense of superiority, this real sense of privilege, and also for those on the receiving end, a sense of being overlooked and of undervalued. Now, if you're sensing that the whole idea around some people in your organisation having privilege and using it in perhaps an unwise manner or an unhelpful manner, if you're sensing that not only what has happened in locally here in Australia, but also globally, we've got 2 major conflicts going on in which people sit on both sides, in both camps, for legitimate reasons. And you know that these differences, these conflicts are actually trickling down into conflict and an inability to handle change in your workplace. Reach out to me. I'm going to put a link in the comments. Come and have a 20-minute chat with me, because I have some strategies that will be really helpful for you in your workplace as you deal with the privileges that are found in your workplace that can be impacting negatively the structure, the cohesiveness, and the effectiveness of your teams.